I've worked in a government research facility since I left college. That was back in the 1990s. I was first recruited because of my background in chemistry and biology. I'm not going to talk about where I worked beyond it being outside a major metropolitan city and a place where you wouldn't expect to see a large government-funded lab. My team and I worked on what could best be described as subliminal hypnosis programming. Our job was to introduce programming into subjects without them realizing what was going on. The hypnotic programming was designed to cascade. The more the subject was exposed to the programming, the more complex the alterations we could introduce. The most important or interesting, if you don't have a moral code, was that we could eventually change the behavior of the host organism without its conscious decision. There have been many behavioral modification experiments done over the decades. If you know what a Pavlovian response is, that's exactly what I'm talking about. But nothing has been tried on this level and magnitude for a few decades. If you remember the subliminal ads of the 1980s, where images were embedded in other images so that the eye would pick them up, but the conscious mind wouldn't recognize them, you'll have an idea of what our modification programs could do. Coca-Cola wanted consumers to buy their sodas. We wanted other things. Our experiment started on smaller things, like rats. Their high levels of intelligence and adaptability made them ideal for this sort of thing. When the rat-based experiments showed promise, our team was allowed to move upward. Cats, unsurprisingly, were not responsive enough to the programming, but canine subjects proved particularly well-suited. Our baseline experiments were able to change the subject's behavior. Making a dog sit when you walk in the room is something anyone can do. Making a dog sit only when someone wearing a particular coat comes in the room is different. Those were the proof that the program worked. But that wasn't where it stopped. Before I go on, I must stress that the facility I worked in was in a major urban area. When the program moved to the next phase, we were all relocated to an installation in the Badlands of South Dakota. Our test subjects now were people. I never knew where they were from. The research staff was discouraged from making small talk. Our job was to run an experiment, and interacting with the subjects was not going to help with that. I must also stress that we were all told that the experiments were designed to help curb addictive behavior. Exposure to the programming, delivered through a simple screen or through headphones via a music screen, was supposed to help people with drinking problems, smoking problems, gambling problems. I'd thought that an odd application because our initial tests had been designed to produce a positive behavior in an animal subject, not an avoidant behavior in a human one. But I, like the rest of my team, stayed quiet. Our livelihoods were on the line. Our initial testing went well. After several sessions, the subjects all reported aversion to the target behavior. We received more funding and more subjects. And then it all went wrong. Some of my team was sequestered for additional work. We weren't even allowed to talk to them, and they were housed in a separate facility, to say nothing of the separate workspace. The colleagues were both psychologists and social scientists. Then one of our subjects had an adverse reaction with a cardiac arrest. The program went on hold for a few days while investigations began. I don't know what happened to him, but I do know that his body was cremated on site. I found that curious. Not only had he died of major health events, his body had not been returned to any family. When I asked if anything was being done to notify any next of kin, I was told that no such person had been in the program, and no one had died. The program resumed, and there were thankfully no more fatalities. However, we got better and better at layering the subliminal suggestions to create very complex behaviors that could be triggered by a particular stimulant, say a sound or an image. These complex behaviors would immediately overwhelm the subject and override the conscious will, making the subject act in ways that they would not normally and without any physical cues, such as anything that could be read by a body language expert. In other words, we were creating secondary personalities that could be activated at whim. In every experiment, errors occur, and another one happened. This time, when the subject snapped, it was violent. One of my colleagues was killed and 4 of the floor security guards died before the subject collapsed. Aneurysm. This time, our program went on hold pending another investigation, and our research was terminated. We were disbanded, but kept within other government programs. While all the records were scrubbed, I suspect they still exist somewhere in the depths of the dark web. I would discourage anyone from trying to find them. You may believe me or not at your own discretion, but looking for answers is never something that comes without a price. I know that all too well now. Anyone who's ever driven south to north through South Dakota on Interstate 90 has likely noticed that there aren't a whole lot of rest stops that are open, and I'm about to tell you why. The state can't get anyone to clean them. Yep, you heard that right. The state cannot find anyone to clean the rest stop bathrooms, despite being willing to pay someone well to do it. In fact, a few years ago, after I quit the gig, they ran the ad for months before they finally just decided to close all but 2 of them to the public, leaving north or southbound travelers through the eastern half of the state to have to hold it until they hit the next down, which is sometimes half an hour or more between them. If you've made that trip recently and found yourself caught off guard by the lack of available bathrooms, I'm sorry. It's all my fault. Let me tell you what happened. For years, I'd been cleaning those rest stop bathrooms almost religiously every Monday, Wednesday, and Saturday. I live right up by Wahpeton, North Dakota, but on the South Dakota side of the state line, which made me eligible for the contract all those years ago when I bid on the job. On my working days, I'd get up early and drive south the whole length of the interstate and back, hitting every stop along the way to clean the bathrooms and make note of any maintenance that needed to be done so I could alert the state on that. Nobody ever thinks about us rest stop cleaners, and that fact is made evident by how often I'd roll up on one and find it absolutely trashed. People don't have a lot of respect for what isn't theirs anymore, and one winter a few years ago I found myself battling it out silently with someone that was intent on making my job hell. It started out that I'd show up and just find the trash cans tipped over and the garbage strewn about, old diapers and used feminine products and paper towels. It was an unsanitary and unwelcoming mess, but I knew what I was signing up for when I took the job, so I didn't let myself complain too much about it at first. After a few times of it, though, I got smart and bought myself a chain and padlock and chained that trash can to the wall in such a way that nobody could tip it or take the lid off without the key. The next couple times I went to clean up, I found out it had worked just right, and the messes let up for a while. Eventually, though, I went and discovered a sight even more horrid. Piled up in the bathroom floor were 3 different deer corpses, all of them busted open with their entrails hanging out. I called the sheriff to come down and check that one out, and when he did, he shook his head and said he couldn't understand it either. Upon closer inspection, though, he realized that none of the deer had been shot, and they were all in varying stages of decomposition, meaning they hadn't been killed at the same time, or even on the same day. When the game warden showed up and took a look, he showed us some busted rib bones and vertebrae that seemed to indicate the deer had all been hit by cars. In the morning, blood puddles on the asphalt in 3 separate places nearby. The rest stop all but confirmed it. We were left scratching our heads. Who would do such a thing? Over the next several weeks, though, it happened over and over and over again. Finally, the sheriff decided to dip into his own wallet and set up a camera to try to catch the sicko. But when it happened again and we went to check the camera, we couldn't believe what we saw. A tall, gaunt, white creature with antlers was what dragged all those dead deer into that bathroom. It had eyes that reflected light just like the deer themselves, and even paused at one point, noticing the camera but didn't do anything about it. The tape got turned over to state police, who were quick to tell us that what we saw was a prank and not to tell anyone about it, lest we made the state look foolish. I've always been a little loose-lipped, though, so a few nights after that, when I was hanging out at the Indian casino, having more than my share of drinks, I let it slip what had been going on at those truck stops. A Lakota man working the craps table looked at me and his face got real serious. He told me I needed to quit that job because what I'd been dealing with was a Wendigo. He told me he's dragging those deer in there to tell everyone he's mad about the trucks and cars not slowing down. He'll be dragging the bones of people in there next. I called my state contact and quit the job the very next morning. They ran the ad for a while, but then opted to shut the bathrooms down. I'm not sure in hindsight if it was because they couldn't find anyone to work, really, or if they were trying to prevent word from getting out about what's been going on with the Wendigo. All I can say is if you're traveling through the state at night, keep an eye out and don't stop between towns. Something's out there. My wife and I are antique collectors. We live in Massachusetts near Salem, which isn't just a coincidence. We moved here after getting married. We both prefer things on the creepy side. Think Ouija boards, old dolls, clown figurines, you get the picture. We have enjoyed doing this for the past 4 years that we have been together. We actually met at a CreepyCon when we were 21. It was nice to finally meet someone who enjoyed the same things I do. I don't enjoy dressing up crazy or anything like that. I just like creepy things, and I have ever since I was a kid. About 6 months ago, we found a very old porcelain doll. We believe she dated back to the 1920s, but we were not ever able to fully verify this. She was very fair-skinned with perfectly painted freckles and long locks of soft strawberry blonde hair. Her porcelain face did have a fair amount of crazing. Crazing is what happens when the porcelain starts to crack. My wife was really excited about the doll because she had the brightest green eyes we have ever seen on a doll. We paid the $250 asking price and took her home to add to our collection. We even gave her a name, Iris. Now, we love creepy. We love interesting. We do not love scary. There is nothing fun about being scared, and I prefer not to even think about it. So, we bring Iris home and place her with the rest of our doll collection. We have a guest bedroom that has a daybed, and that is where we set them all up. We put her in the middle, but in the second row since she was a bit taller than some of the other dolls. We didn't enter the room for about a week until my wife went in to do some cleanup. I immediately heard a scream, so I went straight to the room. Most of the dolls had been knocked over. Iris was still where we placed her. I told my wife that it must have been our cat. We straightened up the mess and left the room. Now this is where things get strange. You don't have to believe me. I know what I saw and what I experienced. This was a life-changing experience for not only me, but also my wife. We started to hear things at night like something scuttling across our hardwood floors. I would have to get up and go get our cat because we thought the cat had zoomies. Almost every time poor little Salem was in his cat bed. One night, though, I heard the scuttling and got up to go find Salem, only to see he was in bed with us. I told my wife the next morning that we needed to hire an exterminator because I thought we had mice. We walked into our living room and Iris was sitting on our couch. She was in the same position we had placed her in on the doll bed, but on the couch. We looked at each other and I asked my wife why she would move Iris to the couch. My wife claimed they had not touched Iris and swore that I was the culprit. Obviously, it wasn't me. I grabbed Iris and took her back to the guest room. When I entered the room, I was shocked. All of our precious dolls were on the floor. Many of them were broken beyond repair. I started crying and my wife came into the room. We were both shocked. We salvaged what we could and estimated our losses at over $2,000. There were a total of 16 dolls broken. It was devastating. We didn't know what happened. Did someone break in and we didn't hear it? Was Salem playing in the room? We just didn't know. We reorganized the room and put Iris in a rocking chair near the window. We also decided we would keep the door shut from that point on, just in case Salem had gone on a doll rampage. I didn't go into that room for about a month. I honestly didn't want to. My wife is a more logical thinker, but me, I am thinking the worst. I started Googling strange happenings with dolls, and I even tried to find out some of Iris's origins. I couldn't find out anything about the doll. Nothing, not even any information on the company who made her. There were no records of anything anywhere. I told my wife that we should get rid of Iris. It did not go over very well. I was told I was being ridiculous. I didn't feel I was being ridiculous, but I left the situation alone. We were still hearing the scuttling at night, even after the exterminator came and checked our house. We had no mice, just a small cluster of spiders in our laundry area. Spiders don't make that much noise. I was spooked. I woke up in the middle of the night, and I was extremely thirsty. I opened our master bedroom door, and when I did, I heard the guest room door snap shut. I went straight to the door and opened it back up. In the light from the hallway, I could see that Iris was sitting in the chair. She was not in the position we had left her. Her head was tilted towards me as if she was looking at me, and the chair was rocking. I let out a screech, and my wife came from our room to find out what was happening. I explained what I had heard and seen, and we closed the door. I was almost hyperventilating. My wife said I was overacting and reopened the door. Iris was now looking towards the window, and the chair was rocking at the exact same pace. It had not slowed down. My wife looked at me and told me we were getting rid of that doll now, and that's what we did. We put her in a dumpster behind a fast food restaurant up the street. We will not buy any more dolls. I enjoy not hearing scuttling throughout the night and not having my things broken. I think it is better this way anyways. What happened to me happened in my last year of college at the University of Utah while studying for a degree in conservation. Instead of going home for winter break, I signed up for a short internship shadowing a park ranger. It was only going to last a month, and the park ranger I was going to be working with had a station next to a huge ski resort. I'll say right now that I'm an avid skier and had been hoping to do more skiing than working, but that didn't end up being the case. I had less than a week left of my internship when we got a call about an animal in distress somewhere along the road towards the ski resort. And ironically, that was the last place I wanted to be. I think I had maybe gone skiing twice since this whole ordeal started, and I felt like the universe was laughing at me at this point. I can't really complain about the job, though. It's exactly what I signed up for, and Noah was a great guy to work for. I just wished I would have been working maybe a little less, especially over the holidays. When we got in the ranger truck, I asked Noah about the details of the animal incident. Usually when we get a call like this, it's a collision with a vehicle. Sometimes we can help the animal and take it to a rehab center, but a lot of times we can't. I felt relieved when Noah said it wasn't a vehicle accident. He said the report was from multiple people going to and from the resort, that they either heard or saw a puppy crying for help, but no one could catch it. I asked Noah why we got called instead of animal control or something. He said it was because there is no animal control out here, and who knows, it might actually be a fox or something. Plus, we weren't doing anything else. Don't get me wrong, I'd much rather search for a lost puppy than see a mangled deer with 2 broken legs from a vehicle collision. Actually, though, I'd rather be skiing. We finally reached the area where the sightings had been reported, and we searched everywhere for it. And I mean everywhere. We probably looked for 2 hours, but still no puppy. Noah drove us to the ski resort to get some coffee and to warm up a little after spending nearly 2 hours outside. I figured by this point, we had tried our best but was starting to feel that we were going to have to give up on the puppy. But Noah wasn't willing to throw in the towel just yet. We finished our coffee and Noah ordered 2 sausage patties to go. I was still silently hoping we had given up and I might get a couple of runs down the mountain today, but it looked like we would be setting a live trap with the fresh sausage as bait. We drove back to the location where the puppy was last seen and set the trap up a little ways away from the road and behind the cover of a few trees. Noah put the sausages in the trap and said, "I don't know if we're going to catch it, but I guarantee something is going to be in here come morning." And he was right. We drove out first thing in the morning to check the trap. You could see the trap from the road, and the creature that was in it was a little husky puppy. Pure white with blue eyes. There were tracks around the trap, too. but tracks of something much larger than the puppy. They looked canine in nature. I asked Noah if they looked like wolf tracks, and he said no, that these were bigger than wolf tracks. Was it some type of really big dog then, I asked? Dogs don't get that big either, was the only thing he said. We didn't discuss the tracks any further. We just took the puppy to the truck and drove it back to the ranger station. In retrospect, that was a mistake I won't soon forget. The puppy was skittish and disinterested in us. We set it up in a pen at the ranger station and put out a notice that we had found it, hoping to reunite it with its owner. Noah and I had some other outside work to do that day and left the puppy alone at the station. It wasn't a great situation, but at least it was warm and had access to food and water. Work ran a little longer than usual, and we didn't get back to the station until after dark, which is only about 4:30 this time of year. Nothing exciting kept us out, just a couple of trees that needed to be cleared off the public access road to one of the parks. When we got to the station, we both looked at the front door and froze. There were claw marks up and down the door. The door was still latched, but just barely. Noah told me to stay in the truck, but I didn't. We both walked up to the door. Whatever made those marks was big, like the size of a bear. We didn't see any tracks leading up to the building, so we had no way of identifying what it might have been. We went in the station to find everything in place. The door had held and had managed to keep whatever was out there, out. And amazingly, the white husky puppy was still there, looking like it was waiting on dinner. Noah and I stayed at the station for another hour doing our end-of-day paperwork. He told me I could go if I wanted, but he was going to stay a bit later. My car was parked around the side of the building, and I was about to get in it when I noticed tracks leading up to the window of the ranger station. It was obvious that whatever had made them had been looking in at us. I examined the tracks closer, and I was certain they were from the same animal that had earlier been hanging around the trap. I ran back inside to tell Noah what was going on, but he stopped me as soon as I opened the door. He had been coming for me too, and whispered to be quiet because he had heard something strange outside. From the inside, I could hear it walking through the snow, just on the other side of the wall. And then there was a thud, as I heard it jump onto the porch. Noah and I were both afraid to breathe at this point. And then, that damn puppy started howling. And then, as if responding to the cries of the puppy, the creature outside stood up and looked through the window. I only saw it for a brief moment before falling to the floor, but it looked like some sort of wolfman-type creature. Its hair was pure white, and it had piercing blue eyes. The same blue eyes as the puppy. Noah looked over at me, and I knew from the look on his face that he had made the connection too. If it wasn't for Noah, I'm pretty sure I would have been attacked outside by this creature. He used his key remote to set the alarm off on the ranger truck, and that was enough to scare the beast away from the building for a second. And we used that second to open the station door and let the puppy out. And that was it. All the commotion ended immediately. The creature left and never came back. So, I'm going to be really real with you right now. Whatever I just went through isn't a joke. I'm not laughing. I'm freaked out. This isn't normal, and I don't even know if I can cope. Some of you might be able to, but I'm not okay with this. I went out 2 nights ago to this little club in Huntington, West Virginia. My friends and I had a great time, danced a lot, met some new people. It was an all-out good time. I kept my head right because I knew I had to drive myself home. No good time is worth my freedom or my life. It was around 1:30 in the morning, and I decided I'd head back home. I had a seminar at noon, and the class I'm in is difficult, so I need all my rest. So I grabbed some gas and a snack at the little gas station around the corner and start my 45-minute drive. I'm listening to a random pop station, doing a little drive dancing, nothing too crazy, and singing my heart out. I have all the windows down since it's pretty cool out and the air feels great. As I'm driving down this little 2-lane road, my check engine light comes on. My car starts making a sputtering noise, so I pull over and turn on my hazards. I am not a mechanic by any means, but I take a look under the hood. Really, that was just to make myself feel like I had done something. I'm not going to lie to you. At this point, I know I got to call a tow service or something, because I need help. Of course, I wouldn't have service where I broke down at. If I didn't have bad luck, I'd have none at all. There's no one else out at this hour, so I start walking and checking my bars as I go. There were a few cows just standing in this pasture to my left, doing what cows do, I guess. They seemed pretty unbothered. Once I got to the end of the pasture, I heard the cows moving and mooing. They were running in the opposite direction. I can't lie, I laughed so hard. I'm thinking about how these cows had the most delayed reaction to my presence. I check my phone and keep walking past the end of the pasture. That's when I saw it. I'm just going to describe it the best I can. I've never seen anything like that, and I really hope I don't ever again. Just past the last pasture gate, I saw what I initially thought was a man. At first glance, that's what I thought. This man looked bulky, like maybe he had something on his back. I felt relieved at first, but then just fear. My blood ran cold. He didn't have anything on his back. He stretched out wings. He was only maybe 6 foot tall, but his wings had to be like 9 or 10 feet wide. In the moonlight, I could see that they weren't like bird wings. They were like, I don't know, a moth or an ugly butterfly. They were a grayish, dusty color. He moved his head slightly, I think to get a better look at me. When he did, his eyes caught the moonlight and they were bright red. I started screaming. I tried to dial 911 on my phone, but it didn't connect. I still had no bars, and I'm staring at this scary night creature down. I just started panicking. I'm not good under stress. I ran back towards my car. That was the only thing I could think of doing. I didn't hear anything behind me, but I kept running. I don't know what I thought I was going to do when I got back to my car. I dropped my phone, and I had to double back a few steps and find it. When I looked over into the pasture, I could see him standing there. I don't know if he ran or flew there with those big behind wings. There he was, just watching me. Once I found my phone, I went right back to running. I could see the cows in the pasture, and they were all bunched up and mooing loudly. I'm thinking they are probably just as scared as I am and got nowhere they can go. I felt bad for laughing at them earlier. I'm maybe 20 feet from my car now. I can't even put into words how scared I was. My phone wasn't picking up a single bar. I knew my car wasn't going to magically start. I'm going to have to fight this man. That was the only conclusion I could get to. That's when I saw headlights. If I wasn't so busy running, I would have cried. I moved to the middle of the road, just running down that yellow dotted line. If they didn't stop, I was a goner. I didn't want to be a goner. I waved my arms up and down, and I just know I looked crazy. Not as crazy as whatever was stalking me from the pasture, but crazy. This old man stopped. I didn't want him to not help me, so I didn't say anything about someone chasing me. I needed his help. I was so lucky. I have never been lucky, but I was lucky then. This man had tow straps and was able to hook me up. I had to steer my car while he towed me, and when we passed the pasture, I didn't see that creature anywhere. I spent the whole time thinking he was going to pop up in my back seat or something. I stayed at a hotel in the nearest town and missed my seminar. The local mechanic fixed my car. They were really nice there, but I am not going to drive through there again.